All right, good day to you. God bless you. Say, welcome to the Shepherd's Chapel. Welcome to this family Bible study hour. Parable of the fig tree. Christ didn't say, maybe you should learn the parable of the fig tree. He said, learn it. And quite frankly, there is no way that you're going to know the season of the final generation without the information, the parable of the fig tree. Now let's go back, if we may, to the first lecture on this subject. Let's recap it just a little bit so that you're familiar. Naturally, in Mark chapter 13 is where you are told, learn it. That was his sermon, giving you the 7 events that consummate the end of this age, which is to say they're the same as the 7 trumpets, the 7 seals, and the 7 vials, put forth in the simplicity in which Christ only could teach. But he said, learn the parable of the fig tree. Well, then, taking that into consideration, we went to the incident where he cursed this particular type fig tree. And always remember, when God utilizes a plant, an insect, or an animal, it symbolizes a great deal more than is written. What is it about a fig tree? The fig tree is not planted by seed, it's set out as a shoot, planted as a shoot. And then it comes forth, naturally leaves first. And that's what you were to be on guard for, because the fig he wanted you to observe does not produce fruit that is edible. In other words, the bad fig. But there's also good figs. We're going to be covering that in this particular lecture. Now, with that thought in mind, why would he say that, and why is the fig tree used to symbolize so much in our Father's Word through the teachings of Christ, such as that he would go to one, he knew it was out of season, he knew there would be no fruit on the tree, and yet he cursed the tree. Therefore, we know that there are 2 type fig trees. Real quickly, Smyrna, the name of the church mentioned in Revelation chapter 2, verse 9, that he was pleased with. The Smyrna fig is the female fig. The caprice is the male or goat fig, which is unedible. You can't eat them. They're unfit to eat. However, there is a little hole in the end of each fig. The lower part of it, and within the fig are the flowers of the tree. In other words, it is a flowering plant. It's just that they are inside the fig itself. And there is a little wasp, fig wasp, that pollinates back and forth between the male and the female fig. With that having been said, let's go to Jeremiah chapter 24, which is the heart, if you would, of the parable of the fig tree. With that thought in mind, we ask a word of wisdom from our Father. Let's get cracking. All right, 24 verse 1. The Lord showed me, and behold, 2 baskets of figs were set before the temple of the Lord. Now, the temple of the Lord has one geographical location, and that's Mount Zion. So understand where you are geographically speaking, so that you understand the prophecy. After, important now, after that Nebuchadnezzar, or Reza as it is here, king of Babylon, had carried away captive Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and the princes of Judah, with the carpenters and smiths from Jerusalem. Where are they from? From Jerusalem. That's the geographical spot we're focusing on. And had brought them to Babylon. Now, I want to emphasize, if you're not familiar with biblical history, the house of Israel had been taken captive 200 years prior to this incident. So we're focusing on Judah. Judah is part of the sign of the fig. All right? In other words, the parable of the fig tree. And the location, of course, being Jerusalem. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, his captivity lasted 70 years. But when you read the book of Ezra, and this is important, many that cannot understand the Hebrew, only about half those that returned were children of Judah. The others were Nethinim. Nethinim is a Hebrew word that means Nathan is to service or given to service. In other words, the preachers got too lazy to cut their own wood. So they dedicated certain peoples to do part of the temple work. And within this, as a matter of fact, in the book of Ezra, went on their way back to Jerusalem at the end of the captivity. Ezra helped a little head count, and not one Levitical priest did he have with him. They were all Nethinim. I mean, that's how far those that had taken over the priesthood. And that's why you want to be very careful even to this day. You want to be very careful as we begin Christ telling you how to determine. He said you test a false prophet by his fruit. You don't get figs off of a vine tree. You know, most people, and you don't learn God's word from a preacher that's a one-verse Charlie and never teaches the word of God either, chapter by chapter and verse by verse. That, you know, it doesn't take a real bright person to figure that out or to understand it. All right. So here we have then the Nethinim returning back to this place, and thus you have the kind of the secret of separating the goat figs from the true figs. With that having been said, let's go with verse 2. One basket had very good figs, even like the figs that are first ripe. Boy, I mean, that's the plush of the crop, all right? And the other basket had very naughty figs, which could not be eaten. They were so bad. Of course, these being goat or caprice, the male fig. You don't eat them. They're not edible, all right? Verse 3. Then said the Lord unto me, What seest thou, Jeremiah? And I said, Figs. The good figs, very good. And the evil, very evil, that cannot be eaten. They are so evil. Now, beloved, I want you to let your mind, if you would, go back to the beginning. I want you to let your mind go to the garden where we had the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Which did Eve partake of? Naturally, it was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is quite simply to say Satan. And with that, we see the bad fig. We'll be talking more about that in a moment. But what are we talking about? We're talking about Jerusalem. We're talking about Judah. And the subject then being set in the heart of the parable. Let's go with it. Verse 4. Again the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, 5, Thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, Like these good figs, so will I acknowledge them that are carried away captive of Judah, whom I have sent out of this place into the land of the Chaldeans, that's to say Babylon, for their good, for their own good. Now, again, to return in the first migration back to Jerusalem, which did not last long. They were driven out in 70 A.D. by a little tin-horn general, Titus, Roman general, that is. But very few of Judah returned at that particular time. God said, I'm going to treat certain as very good figs. 6, For I will set mine eyes upon them for good, and I will bring them again to this land, and I will build them, and not pull them down, and I will plant them and not pluck them up. What has happened in your lifetime? In the year, for someone my age, in the year 1948, Judah returned to Jerusalem. Judah set up a kingdom. And unfortunately, we see within that a kingdom, a country, a nation, we see both good and bad figs. And that's what God wants you to be aware of. Naturally, what's he talking about? The Kenites. That's why he would say to the church of Smyrna, named for that fig, in Revelation 2:9, you are blessed for your knowledge to know those that claim to be of our brother Judah, but in fact are of the synagogue of Satan. So you have both baskets on the return. The information is that in learning the parable of the fig tree, you understand where the spurious Messiah shall appear and who he shall appear to. All right? Very important. But God's promise that after it was established, well, has it been established several times? No. Once, since the year 70 A.D., and that was in the year of our Lord, 1948. Now, I will have you remember Christ's prophecy concerning that, concerning the parable of the fig tree. Listen and learn more now from the fig. 7. And I will give them an heart to know me, to know the truth, to know God's word, not man's word. That I am the Lord, and they shall be my people. As it would be in the book of Hosea, not lo ami, but ami, my people. And I will be their God, for they shall return unto me with their whole heart. He's talking here about the good figs, all right? What about the bad? Verse 8. And as the evil figs, which cannot be eaten, they are so evil, surely thus saith the Lord, so will I give Zedekiah, the king of Judah, and his princes, and the residue. What does residue mean? It doesn't mean Judah, necessarily. It means anyone that claims to be of Judah, or as we say today, a resident. Many of you are residents of your specific state or nation as we go around the world at this time. That makes you a residue of that particular location. So naturally, again, we speak of the residue that claim to be of Judah and in fact do lie and are of the synagogue of Satan. And this certainly gives our brother Judah a great deal of trouble. I must remind you again in the Greek what the word Jews, as it is used in Revelation 2:9, means. The word is Iudas, and it means, and this is very important, it means of the tribe of Judah, or a resident of the land of Judea, which is the nation of Judah. So it's like when you live in Arkansas, you're either an Arkansasier, as some of us say, or you're an Arkansan. But that has nothing to do with your tribe, your heritage, or anything else. That's an identifier by geographical location. This has caused our brother Judah a great deal of difficulty, and it's important that you remain open-minded, whereby you recognize that. Now, and the residue of where? Of Jerusalem. Not Rome, not some other city, of Jerusalem, that remaineth in this land, and them that dwell in the land of Egypt. Verse 9. And I will deliver them to be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth for their hurt. And so the Kenites were, along with certain other elements scattered to the world, and yes, to their own hurt, to be a reproach and a proverb, a taunt and a curse in all places whither I shall drive them. And so it is, not only to Judah, but to the house of Israel, which is the other 10 tribes. We were promised by God in the book of Amos in chapter 6 verse 14 that we would be cursed from the time that the nation Hamath, from the entering in of Hamath, who was the father, one of the fathers at that time of the writing of the Kenites, which simply means sons of Cain, and that we would be cursed from that time forward. And certainly they are bad figs. Have been, always will be, and continue to be. It is the equivalent of the tares of Matthew chapter 13. Verse 10. And I will send the sword of famine and the pestilence among them, till they be consumed from off the land that I gave unto them and to their fathers. In other words, in 70 A.D., all were dispersed from Jerusalem. And they wandered the world, living in this country, that country. But in the year of our Lord, 1948, they returned and set out to shoot. And it has grown now for many years. It puts forth leaves. It would not bring forth fruit. That is to say, that was not the thing you were to watch for, but the leaves. Leaves for what? Leaves for healing, for one thing. But there you have the parable of the fig tree, and you can understand why Christ would say, when you see the fig, the shoot, begin to put forth leaves, know that this generation shall not pass away until all these things be fulfilled. That is a blank statement from our Heavenly Father, and you can understand why it is very important that Christ would say, not maybe you should learn the parable of the fig tree. He said, learn it. Because it allows you not to know the year, the day, but to know the generation. That generation began in 1948. Both good and bad figs set in that place, and time marches on. Now, there's still a great deal more to learn concerning the parable. Let's, if we may, let's go on back to Isaiah, the book of Isaiah. Let's go to chapter 34. Let's learn a little more of what Father would say. Never take one witness, always look for another. Isaiah chapter 34, verse 1, and it reads, "Come near, ye nations, to hear." In other words, this is important. God is saying, and nations in the plural means all races. This is important to you. "And hearken, ye people, let the earth hear." That's this globe on which we reside. "And all that is therein." All means exactly that. The world and all things that come forth of it. In other words, this address, many people will ask me, well, when is my particular race addressed in God's Word? Well, this is all. This means all of the races are addressed in this specific verse. All right? God says this message is for you. "For the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations." He's not happy. "And his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them to the slaughterer." The slaughterer, this is a divine ban. It is placed, all the nations are placed under it. And don't forget what the enemy is of the end times. It's deception. It's for nations to be deceived. And quite frankly, if you look at the nations in the world today where we sit, and I'll be dating this, but be that as it may, the United Nations is supposed to be that part that comes to agreement. Do you know that we have 400 United Nations troops that are supposed to be peacekeepers that are captives at this time? And in our nation that is blessed, the superpower of superpowers of the free world, we have young children gunning each other down as though they were dueling in the streets as times of old. We have lost the ability to respect each other with dignity, inasmuch as we are taught by the so-called educational system that we are all one, and you must always think of one, rather than respecting each other's religions and our beliefs and respecting them with dignity, whereby you dignify and respect that people. People strike out and they know not why. How interesting. God's word is so precious. 3. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountain shall be melted with their blood. We're looking forward here to the final hour of this age. That is to say, the age of the flesh. What happens in the final hour? You've heard it taught by Paul, by our Father himself, that in an instant the flesh is put off and the spiritual body in the twinkle of an eye. What happens to all those bodies? Think about it for a moment. 4. And all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their host means people, all right, shall fall down as the leaf falleth off from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree. Do you know what happens to an old fig when it's overripe and it falls from the fig tree? Big old nice plump thing. It splatters, okay? It's not a good falling. Why would it mention, have we got bad people in heaven? Heaven's going to be rolled up like a scroll? Is it not written in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10, that this earth age shall be destroyed by fire? Only it is the what specifically that will be destroyed? The elements, which is a Greek word meaning rudiments, which means only the evil, not the good. God isn't angry at those that care. None of us are perfect, but if you care, if you try to serve Him, He has no argument with you as far as destroying you or anything about you. But the evil fig, as the fading fig, shall be destroyed. Now many would say, well, what does he mean heaven is rolled up? We move into the third heaven age, from the second to the third, when that particular time comes. And never forget, as Christ would teach you in Luke chapter 16, concerning the parable of Lazarus and the rich man, when you see paradise, and you see Lazarus, which is a Greek word that is the equivalent of the Hebrew word Eleazar, which is the chief priest of Aaron's son, meaning preacher, teacher, was in the bosom of Abraham. In other words, he was brought back to good standing through Christ's teachings. But the rich man was across the gulf that man could not cross. In other words, where do the dead people go? Well, to be absent from this body is present with the Lord. They are in paradise, but not in good standing. So naturally, there must be a millennium. Thus it shall be. And that's why he will say here in a moment that his sword will be bathed in heaven as well. Takes a little housekeeping on all quarters. Okay, verse 5. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. What is his sword? Revelation 1:16. My sword is, my tongue is a two-edged sword. It's his word. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea and upon the people of my curse to judgment. Now, that geographical location, as it is written in Ezekiel 38 and 39, 2 chapters before the millennium begins, of course, you know, is the north country, the country of Esau. Verse 6. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness. In other words, it's going to have plenty to do. And with the blood of lambs and goats, and with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For the Lord hath a sacrifice in Bozrah. Bozrah was a fortress of Edom. Understand, this is a prelude to Ezekiel 38 and 39. For a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. You know, we purchased Alaska from Idumea. That is to say, the land of Rush, which you will find written in God's Word and in the 38th chapter of Ezekiel, the second. In English, it is to you the chief prince. Chief prince in the Hebrew tongue is the chief prince of Rush. Still the same to this day. Don't worry. We have a Cold War ended. God's word shall come to pass exactly as it's written. Verse 7. And the unicorn, there's no such thing as a unicorn. This word in the text in the Hebrew is wild ox. Okay? The wild ox shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked, that's drunken, with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness. These were animals of sacrifice. And what God is telling you, I'm going to have my part. All right? And he's speaking in the earth will be fertilized with their blood. Well, maybe, who knows, in a sense, we may find out there what happens in that dimension to the flesh. Verse 8, the reason we came here, concerning the fading fig, the falling fig, for it is the day of the Lord's vengeance. Do you know when that happens? It's when he returns. And the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. Where? Geographically? Zion. There's only One place in God's Word referred to as Zion, and that is Mount Zion. And on the north side of Mount Zion is God's favorite place. He made an everlasting covenant with it in Ezekiel chapter 16. He said, this is my favorite spot. And naturally, that's where his temple is. So on the day of recompense, those that understand our Father's Word, that He loves His children, all of them, I don't care what race or color you are, that He loves you, and inasmuch as you try, even though you fall short at times, repent and get back in good standing. He's not angry with you. And inasmuch as our Father is a consuming fire, as it is written in the last verse of Hebrews chapter 12, His fire does not affect you. His fire burns that is evil. His fire to you is the Shekinah glory, or the Holy Spirit, that warms your heart. All evil shall be destroyed with that sword of the Lord, which is to say His Word. His Word today alleviates anxieties, troubles, heartaches, solves those problems. His love does. Because it causes you, as you absorb His wisdom, to know how to handle your life, whereby you can take care of problems with His help. But on that day of vengeance, and the subject of this particular lecture, when will it happen? Well, it will happen in the time of the fig tree. Now, I'll tell you what let's do. Let's run, if we may, real quickly to chapter 6 in the book of Revelation. Remember, we just finished teaching this book, chapter by chapter, but I want you to go back to one verse so that you understand the parable of the fig tree, as we are in chapter 6 of the book of Revelation here. And we're going to pick it up there with verse 13. And the sixth seal has been opened, so that you can see what's happening there. What is happening? The sixth seal, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth. This is when Satan and his little fake angels are cast out, and Satan himself, Lucifer, which in the Hebrew tongue means the bright morning star, in other words, he's pretending to be Christ, comes to the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs. Not timely figs. Untimely figs means harvested out of season, not waiting for the true season, which is to say, the return of the true Messiah, but are sucked in by the any moment doctrine and worship the fake. Don't know the difference. Biblically illiterate. So, again, the sixth seal. Does the New Testament differ with the Old? Of course not. There's no different in this verse than the one in Isaiah chapter 34. Listen to it. Her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind, ruach in the Hebrew tongue, the Spirit of God. 14. And the heaven departed as a scroll. Sound familiar? It should. When it is rolled together, and every mountain, that's nation and island, were moved out of their places with the shaking of God. Yes, the changing, the power structure of the nations, because there's going to be only one king. 15. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because the simple reason being, they've worshiped the spurious Messiah. How would you feel as a Christian, and you've gone in for the big game, and you're playing your heart out here? I mean, he's come, he's trying to get everyone gathered up here, holding the biggest revival the world has ever seen. And you've been told, we're going to gather together and fly out of here. We're out of here, man. And you're working for him, and all of a sudden you see the true Christ returning. You're going to be too ashamed to face him. That's why they pray for the rocks to fall on them. 17, as we continue. 16, rather, as we continue. And said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. They know the day of vengeance has come, and that they've been had. 17, for the great day of his wrath or vengeance is come, and who shall be able to stand? you're beginning to see a little bit why he would say, not maybe, learn the parable of the fig tree. Because the fig is even connected with, and the replanting of it, an event that has happened only one time. And a few short years after Christ walked this earth, became that nation again in the year 1948. How long is a generation? Well, as a student of God's Word, there are 3 generations mentioned. One is the 40-year generation that the children wandered in the wilderness and before they were entered the promised land. Well, it would seem that that would be the one, but that passed by in the year 1988. And then there is another generation. What is it in the book of Psalms? That is, let's see, 60 plus 10, 70-year generation. And then there's another generation. It's back in Genesis chapter 6, where the Nephilim, from the prime Hebrew Napha, fallen angels, saw the daughters of Adam. They were beautiful. And they took them, and children were born to them, these misfits. And they were Geba, giants. So it grieved God that he had placed man in flesh. That means that he had taken the souls that he had created in the beginning and caused them to be born innocent of woman into a flesh body. Born innocent to make their own mind up whether they're going to love him or love the other, Satan, that is to say. So that's a 120-year generation. I can tell you exactly how long it's going to be. It's going to be from the time of 1948 until Christ returns. But the signs of every promise that we would go into one-worldism, you don't know it, but you took one of the greatest steps towards one-worldism yesterday, and it's called GATT. A lot of our sovereignty, though, can we live with it? Of course we can. We will compete with anybody and win. Why? We're a blessed nation of God, leader in the free world. Are we not mentioned in God's Word? Wouldn't God be a little small had he created a nation that is the leader of the free world without having been mentioned? Anywhere the 10 tribes go, thus the blessings of God as he promised. Now, what about the fig tree? Where did it start, though? You are told in Revelation chapter 13, verse 18, that you are to count the number of the beast. That means, what he's saying, he says, here's wisdom. I'm going to tell you how to spot him. We'll just bring this right down where the rubber meets the road. The word count, as it is utilized there in the Greek, means to enumerate by pebbles worn smooth over a long period of time, like you would carry them in your pocket, to cast lots with or something like that. Over a long, watch them from the very beginning. I want real quickly to go with you to Genesis chapter 3, where the trouble started in the beginning. Now, unfortunately, due to the fact that the majority of people in this generation are biblically illiterate, they've been taught by certain one-verse Charlies, oh yes, Eve was strolling out in the park one day and here come a snake. Doesn't matter that in the book of Revelations you are told that old serpent, Lucifer the dragon, or the devil and Satan, now it was a snake, and they climbed up an apple tree. And Eve partook of the apple. Now that's a lie. It's not biblical. It's not in God's Word. And when you lie to children in the Sunday schools of God's own house, you're deceiving them as far as understanding the clarity of God's Word. And quite frankly, Christ himself would teach on the flip side of this coin of the parable of the fig tree, the parable of the tares. He said, you'll either understand this parable or you won't understand any of them. And what was that parable of the tares? That Satan came in the night and planted tares in the garden of God, and the children of the good seed were of God and the children of the bad seed were of Satan. All right? Be that as it may. Okay, let's go to Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. Listen to the woman. What kind of a garden were they in? What kind of a grove were they in truthfully from God's Word. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eye. Remember what Christ told you about checking the fruit? Be a fruit inspector. All right? You should know by the fruit. If you get an orange off of an apple tree, something's wrong. Got it? That it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise. She took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. Now, listen to that carefully. She took of the fruit, and by their fruit you shall know them. God's commandment was, in verse 3, that you shall not touch it. Do you know what that word touch is in the Hebrew tongue? It's naga. Do you know what it means? It means to lie with a woman in one case. So don't be deceived. As Eve would say, I was beguiled by the serpent. Paul would teach in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, I'm jealous because I have espoused you to one husband, and I don't want you to be beguiled as Eve was by the Satan. The word beguiled in the Greek is expatio, and it has one meaning only, to be wholly seduced. And then he continues, because I want to present you as a virgin. Do you know how you lose your virginity? Wake up. Teach your children the truth at a level they can understand. Okay? She took of the fruit herself and then shared with her husband the same fruit. Not her fruit, but the fruit she partook of. Verse 7, and the eyes of them both were opened. Do you know that this is the prime of the word atash, which is tree? The word tree is etz in the Hebrew, but it comes from the prime atash, which means the backbone. These are our limbs. The backbone is the skeletal formation through which the central nervous system runs that gives you knowledge when it ties into the brain. You're supposed to think with it. Surely your eyes will be open, or the opening or closing of the eyes is a part of the word atash. And they knew that they were naked. How did they know that? And they sowed fig, F-I-G, fig. What kind of orchard were they in? Apple? No. Fig, yes. Fig leaves together and made themselves mask from where they had eaten the apple. That's not what God's Word says. Don't lie to children in churches. Gave them aprons. They covered their private parts. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from his presence. From the presence, rather, of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. And the Lord called unto Adam, and and he said unto him, where art thou? Where you at? He knew, 10. And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. 11. And he said, God, who told thee thou wast naked? I mean, they were innocent. How do you know that you are naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? And the men said, the woman, man's been doing it ever since. Woman's fault. The woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. And that's exactly the way it was. Satan can appear to be whatever he wishes to. 13, and the Lord God said unto the woman, what is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. You want to know what the results of it was? And I will put enmity between, God talking to the serpent then in verse 15. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed, sperma, and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. And so it was through the woman that Christ would be born, and his heels were nailed to the cross. But on the day of vengeance, Satan's head gets it. All right? So, there you have it. Now, why Inasmuch as we've gone through all this, why is it that the parable of the fig tree was important? I'm going to read it in closing one time for you. Mark 13, where Christ has mentioned the 7 events that will transpire just before the day of the Lord. Any child can understand them if you understand the parable of the fig tree. But this is why he told you, why it's so important at this time. Mark 13, verse 28. Now learn, not maybe, learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is near. You know what summer is? That's harvest. 29. So ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the door. Verily I say unto you, that this generation, what generation? The generation when Judah would be returned as the good fig, and the Kenite is the bad fig, back to Jerusalem. 1948. This generation shall not pass till all these things be done. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. Why is the parable important? It lets you know the final generation without any man's date setting or anything else, but pure word from God. And when you live in a generation that you can see it, you can see the prophecies unfolding daily around us. How precious the word is that God, if we take a moment to look into the in-depth truth in the simplicity in which he taught, we can learn a great deal about the generation we live in, the generation in which the parable of the fig tree is unfolding and revealing itself. God's not angry at you if you're trying. And I don't care if you're in the gutter, I don't care if you're strung out on drugs. He loves you. Doesn't like what you're doing if that's what you're doing. But he will help you. He's calling out a people that can see the simplicity in which he teaches to be a champion in this end generation. I don't know. Do you have eyes to see and ears to hear? Think about it. The parable of the fig tree. All right, bless your heart. You listen a moment, won't you please?